Alright, scale stuff went well. So here is the newest one. Surprise, surprise, just 4 strings at a time now. So for the chord stuff, we're going to move on to inversions. We're going to start working with the first inversion. So, as I was taught, you got voicings and you have inversions. And I'm going to bring up a text document here. Basically, an inversion is like starting in the 1, 3, 5 and continuing to go in that order. So if we had like 1, 3, 5, and then we continued at 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. Basically, what we just got done doing a lot of stuff with is no inversion or root position. So we can call that the root position there, or no inversion. But when we start on the second note in and play those 3, that's your first inversion. So the first inversion has the third interval in the base of the chord, not the root note. The root note is still 1, still the first interval. So you don't have to have the root note of a chord in the base of the chord. Usually that's what happens. But we still consider the first interval the root note here because everything branches out from that. So the second interval, or second inversion would be going 5, 1, 3. So you'd be starting with the 5th interval, root note would be in the middle, and then the 3rd interval. So the first inversion has the root note in the highest point of the chord. The second inversion would have the root note in the middle of the chord. But we are going to just take our time and really drill this stuff so you absolutely know it. We're going to focus on just the first inversion now. So, just one last example here. We use the C chord. So we put these letters or the notes just over and over again. C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G. So, as we have been doing, stacking them up one after the next. That would be your root position or no inversion. And then here, E, G, C. That is a C major chord, technically, but a first inversion. So we're going to call that a C major over E. So you're saying you have the chord name first, you say what type of chord it is, and then I'm going to show this on the Guitar Pro in just a minute here. But you'll have a /, and then it says the new bass note. So you can do this with any chord, /, whatever the bass note is. Doesn't matter what the bass note is. With these inversions, the new bass note just happens to be a note already in the chord. So we're going to name things with the bass note in the chord name to make it very specific and obvious what we're doing. It will also help you get more acquainted with this sort of thing. So C major over E would be the first inversion, and when we get to the second inversion, this will be a C major over G. Now, on to the first thing to do this week for the chords. The first line is already done, so you can get familiar with how things look. So C over E, or C major over E. So right there, that's your E note. Down there is the E, so the 3rd interval. There is the G note, the 5th interval. And again, C, root note, is at the top of the chord. So just like with your 3-string power chords or the other triads that we've done, when you start on the low B, the low E, and the A string all the shapes will look exactly the same. When you move up to the D string and the G string, then you'll have to, the notes will be stacked exactly the same, but they'll look a little different because of that G to B string tuning. So when you hit that letter A to auto-generate the chord name, if you have typed it in correctly, you'll get the right chord name. So if you go to put in the chord name and it looks different than what you were expecting, something's gone wrong. So you have a way to basically check your work there. So let's see, once you get that done, we have, of course, more progression stuff. So basically just fill it out, and the first one's done just to show you how it's going to look. A little bit different here at the end, but just like before, you're going from one chord to the next in the most efficient way you can think of. So the string we start with, so this one's starting at the B string, that's what the bass note will be. So the bass note on the next one will be starting on the E string. And this one, the bass note, will be starting on the A string. Not the root note, but the bass note. So fill them all in there, and then before you start playing through, play the stuff as you go to make sure you can do it and it sounds right and it seems like they're all in good positions. But then send it over, let you know how it looks, and then if it's all good, then you go through and make sure you get at least one good take with everything. So right here, a little bit different. So some mode stuff again. So what we're going to do is go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, skip the octave of the root note to the octave of the second, and then back to the root note. And then hit the regular triad chord or the no inversion root position starting on that same string that the first chord was. So yeah, this one, it's a big jump over here, but that's just how it's got to be for this thing. So just the way we have some kind of rules to follow, so we have a structure and we're not like wondering, oh, where the heck do we go? So that's why we're going to do a big jump on that one. But if it's possible, if it is possible, keep it close to the other chords. If it's not possible, not a big deal. Some of the mode stuff, you may end up jumping around a bit too. It's like, see, that is starting with the C note, which is not that note there. So if you can keep it close, do so for this last part. If not, no big deal. Just keep everything starting on the same string that you did for the first chord. Hope that makes sense. And there's one last thing about like quick ways of figuring these things out. So like the major chord there, if you start with a power chord, so that is your root 5 octave of the roots, and you want to make this into a first inversion major chord, we move the root note up a major third, so 2 whole steps, and there's your first inversion. C5 power chord, move the root note up a whole step, so a major third distance. You got your first inversion major chord there. What about minor? Start with that power chord, move it up a step and a half. So a whole step plus half step, that's your minor third. That gives you your minor first inversion minor. So again, start with your power chord, take the root note, move it up a step and a half, or minor third distance, and there you go. Now, same thing can happen with the diminished stuff. So let's do it over here. Let's do it on this one. So for a diminished chord, you wouldn't be starting with a regular power chord. You'd have to start with a diminished 5th chord. So basically, you start with your power chord, take the 5th interval, flat it, and then, just like the minor chord, you move the root note up a step and a half, and there's your first inversion diminished. So once again, you can't have the regular power chord for the diminished, you gotta flat that 5, and then take your root note, move it up a step and a half. There you go. So, hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, just send your theory work in whenever you got it done, and I'll look it over, let you know how it is. I believe that covers it. All right, we'll see you next week.